professor of education at Wayne State University, made this statement: children are not the property of their parents.
Hi, I'm coming into your homes today because we are in the middle of an undeclared war, and the stakes are our children. I have children that range in age from 31 down to 13. I have had 8 children. I am expecting the 5th grandchild any time now. You do not realize what is going on in the schools until you have children in them. As a young parent, I was appalled at the idea of placing sex education classes into our schools in Michigan. My husband and I investigated, and we found that the same publishers on pornography were the same publishers that were trying to promote sex education in our schools. 7,000 parents, taxpayers, grandparents went to Lansing to see a state school board meeting which was addressing this topic. The attitude of the state board at that time, years ago in the late 60s, was that the children were theirs, that we would have no say. They would do what they wanted with our children. At that time, also, Ritalin was brought up in our home. We have been very active always, and my husband had the homeowners group. And the homeowners group was one of the first in our area, and he was president. One of the young parents had called and said that her child was given a note, and the child was to be on Ritalin, a drug, by Monday, or the teacher would not teach her child. I was quite concerned, and I said I didn't mean to offend her, but the teacher has no authorization to write out a prescription. And I found it quite hard to believe. Could she please bring the note over to my home? Which she did. She brought the note to my home. And I then called the principal of the school. I went up to the pharmacist, and this was before Perry Drugs, Save-On, and your Arbor drugstores became chains. This was a small pharmacy. He was also very appalled at the number of children that were being put on this drug. At that time, our pediatrician was one of our best friends, and I called him up because I was very, very concerned. He immediately called the 3 associates in his office. They retested. Prior to that, they had taken what the parents and the teachers as combined had said about the children. Upon examination, 1/3 of the children needed the drug. On the Learning Channel, August 19th here in Michigan, a program that was put out by CHAD, Children and Adults of Attention Deficit Disorder, claimed what I thought as a young parent. I have called for the transcript. The children had come to school, very highly intelligent kids. They were bored and they were put on Ritalin. And do you know where these children are today? In jail. It wasn't until 1993, when I was called back, that I got a copy of this book. Dr. Melvin Anschel is a child psychologist. He claims that the child between the ages of 6 through 12 is in a latency period. This is the time when a child is the most educable. This is also the time compassion is formed. We want to know why our children are becoming so violent, why they have no compassion. The sense of shame is being removed from them. You wonder why gangs are being formed from one part of our state to the other part of our state. All across the country, every single state is experiencing gangs. The violence and the situations creating this is happening through our schools. In Dr. Melvin Anschel's book, What's Wrong with Sex Ed, it is all very, very well put and very easy to read. I recommend this highly. 1970s, we moved out to the country. The school there was like the school where I went, except the habits and the nuns were missing, but the discipline and the excellent academics were in place. My children did very well in the school. In the late 80s, we had a superintendent come in who was a change agent. These people are trained to change the attitudes, values, and beliefs of an entire community. And the changes began very quickly. We had a sex education program again, deceitfully put in as a home economics program. The farmers were delighted. The stoves and the sewing machines had been there for years and had not been used. This was the first of many problems. My daughter, in her 5th grade class, was visited by 2 strangers. These people came in and told the children with these cards, 1-800, you call us when there are times that you can't talk to your parents. After 20 minutes, my daughter was alarmed enough to go down to the office, and she told the principal that they had overstepped their boundaries, that it was horrible to put and plant a seed into any child's head that they should not bring any problems to their parents. It was during the same year that I had allowed my youngest to be given a test to see if she could qualify to be in the gifted and talented program at the school. I am a very strict mother, and I have taught my children that their gift of intelligence comes from God, and what they do back is their gift to our Lord. So I let her be tested, and she was qualifying for this gifted and talented program. One day we were traveling in the car, and in the background the 2 girls were talking, and my youngest said, there was a story problem given in school. The problem was everybody was over 8 was dead, and it was just too unrealistic for me. I was driving the car, I almost went up a telephone pole. Everybody under 8 was alive, and they had to figure why the youngsters were alive and the older ones were dead. That was the last day my daughter was in that class. I told them she was not to be involved in that class anymore. Things began to happen rather quickly then. In our state, with the passage of PA 25, our state took a major step away from the teaching of academics as we all know it, as knowledge, putting knowledge into our children. And this book here, this research manual written by James R. Patrick, America 2000, Goals 2000, Moving a Nation Educationally to a New World Order. We will show you how to order this research manual at the end of the video. This manual is an important to any child, like a dictionary is to a child, or like the Better Homes and Gardens book is to a young bride. It has everything, who is behind this, there is an agenda, and who is financing this. In the one segment, our president of the Michigan Alliance of Families, Betty Lewis, has very easily put a segment in there called Education Jargon. It defines all the definitions that they throw at you to confuse you. It's all doublespeak, and once you know what they mean, then you will also be alarmed. Here is another book. This book is actual testimony taken in 1984 before our senators in Washington. They held these hearings in different states. This testimony was parents, teachers, concerned taxpayers alarmed at what was going on back in 1984. This child abuse in the classroom. The Honorable Samuel Hayakawa, former president of San Francisco State College, claimed, "An educational heresy has flourished, a heresy that rejects the idea of education as the acquisition of knowledge and skills. The heresy of which I speak regards the fundamental task in education as therapy." At this point, I decided that it was necessary to go and visit some of the ministers and priests in the area. The one minister I was very struck with. He had been in Vietnam. He also had been into marijuana and transcendental meditation. I had told him 2 young couples had called from different places in our state saying that their child had been put into an altered state of consciousness. He then told me an unsuspecting child can be put in the state in 6 seconds. An unsuspecting adult, it takes 2 minutes. This is even more addictive than marijuana, alcohol, or any other drugs. This really began to alarm me. Secular humanism has been defined as a religion by our Supreme Court. The schools are promoting secular humanism. Removing the moral absolutes from children is appalling to me. The financial strapping of families has made it almost impossible not to have 2 family earnings in a family. The teachers now, through in-service and workshops, are constantly being told that parents don't care. Parents are too busy. I'm sorry. With both parents having to work, the mother still has to do the laundry, get the groceries, do the shopping, etc., etc. Based on the same formula that the tax deductions were given to the families in our country, Dr. Dobson and Phyllis Schlafly both claim that the present situation is appalling. $9,200 should be the tax exemption for each minor child. And what are they giving you? $2,150. The financial strapping, along with what is happening in our schools, are totally undermining the families. Our school system started a program called Communities First. They brought in people from Hawaii. They are actually reporting every newborn baby to the local schools. In a segment that was in a city meeting, which I had called to see if it was open to the public, my friend and I went down for the day. They had told us it was, in fact, open to the public. We were asked to leave at noon, but not before I saw what I did not like. The social worker said she went into a home and there was a cigarette butt on the floor. I was from the era we did not even have disposable diapers. You might have come into my home and found more than that when I was aiding another child as I was taking care of my newborn. With the Goals 2000 legislation, there is no definition for normal. We are all at risk. Do not let these kindly looking grandmothers into your home. When they come into your home, they are looking like computers. Too many toys, not enough toys, too much food, not enough food, too much interaction with the mother, not enough interaction with the mother. In Perry, Michigan, I was called to go help these people in this area. This little community, a country community, had purchased a $50,000 mobile home unit to greet each new baby as the first and most important parent. Excuse me? Every family they visit can get $75 worth of Similac and formula. What a carrot to give these young, unsuspecting parents. If you have children If you have nieces, if you have any neighbors expecting children, please have them get the Government Nanny book. It is put out by Kathy Duffy. The author of this is a young mother. She has extensively researched this phenomenon. These social workers are working right hand in hand with the Goals 2000, America 2000 legislation. Let me read some of the book to you. Schools are the single largest employer in the United States, the largest mediator of contracts. This low visibility phenomenon of school as big business provides it with powerful political friends, advocates, and many other useful allies. School people are in a financial position to outlast any storm and to keep short attention, public scrutiny, thoroughly confused by constant promises to reform. This is in the foreword. The foreword was written by John Taylor Cato, a former New York City and New York State Teacher of the Year. Further in this book, she remarks, the 10th Amendment prohibits the federal government from dictating curriculum, operating methods, graduation requirements, and other elements of education. Authority over these areas is supposed to be retained by the states. In another area, author Thomas Sowell, parents who send their children to school with instructions to respect and obey their teachers may be surprised to discover how often these children are sent back home, conditioned to disrespect and disobey their parents. Our children are becoming morally confused with a lack of absolutes, emotionally alienated, and socially maladjusted. I highly recommend Kathy Duffy's book, Government Nannies, to anyone who is expecting a child or anyone with little children. Another book that I highly recommend is Out of Control by Brenda Scott. I will not elaborate, I will just read the back cover. This book of horror stories is true. The deplorable and unauthorized might of child protection services is capable of reaching into and destroying any home in America. No matter how innocent and happy your family may be, you are one accusation away from disaster. Social workers are allowed to violate constitutional rights. Innocent parents may appear on computer registers and be branded as child abusers for life. Child Protective Services kidnapped a 6-year-old girl from her kindergarten class because she rubbed herself between her legs. The child was forced to strip, pose for photographs, and submit to a personal examination. The diagnosis was a yeast infection. Without a trial, Child Protective Services demanded that the father leave the home until he admitted his guilt. One father is charged with abuse, molestation, and having a dirty house. All charges are dropped, except for messy housekeeping. The sentence, 60 days in jail, and both parents lose all parental rights. These are not isolated incidents. Every year, it is estimated that over 1 million people are falsely accused of child abuse in this country. You could be next. You hear this on Dateline 2020 last week. This is not being hidden. Parents have to become concerned. Listen to your children. They are being asked the littlest, the more severe, because these children are innocent. They have no barriers for the psychological conditioning that is going on in our classrooms in this country. What parent do you like the best? My grandmother would have put soap in the mouth of any teacher that asked that. How many guns do you have in your home? Does this remind you of the days of Hitler? We have all been inundated with what is going on in the schools. Inventive spelling. You cannot work. You cannot fill out applications with inventive spelling. Whole language has been tossed about in the papers and the media lightly. Whole language basically means how many words can you memorize and put in your brain, as compared to systematic intensive phonics, which has no limitations. Once you have mastered phonics, you can go to the library and read any book that they have in there. In the Apollo 13 movie, which a lot of us have seen, the math that they are being taught today in the classrooms would not have gotten our astronauts back down to Earth. 2 and 2 can be 5. 2 and 2 may be 3. Those Apollo 13 astronauts would be still floating around in space had our men and women at NASA not been trained and taught to think problems out and to have them in a factual science. 2 and 2 is 4. You cannot estimate figures. There are absolutes in everything. August 23rd, the United States Department of Education announced that the SATs had improved in 1995 to the highest level in 20 years. The SAT, according to the Washington Times headline, had fewer questions than previous SAT tests. The verbal section of the new test omits the challenging antonym section. For those of you who do not know what an antonym is, it's a word whose meaning is opposite to that of another word, such as warm is the antonym of cool. And they downplayed the vocabulary. Students are now allowed to use calculators when completing the math section of the test. The time allowed to complete the test has increased to 30 minutes. A trend line has been destroyed. They are now comparing apples to fish. With each video, we are supplying an OBE resource material list. In this list, you will find all the informational books and the research manual that I have mentioned during this video. There are too many, way too many, to highlight in this time slot. In the booklet furnished by Dr. Shirley Carell from Pro Family Forum in Florida, Body Snatching and the New World Odor, you can feel the humor, yet she supplies us with invaluable information. She recommends becoming interested, informed, and involved. You must remove these children out of the schools immediately. Your children are a gift from God. They are for you to mold with your values, attitudes, and beliefs, not the state's. In removing your children, be very aware that Christian and private schools have, because of cost-prohibitive mandates, accepted money from the state and federal government. In doing so, they lose their freedom. I recommend homeschooling, but take your children out of these schools immediately. My people perish for lack of knowledge. That is found in the Bible under Hosea 4:6. Charlotte Iserby, a former senior policy advisor, has just made a new audio cassette and video cassette that just arrived yesterday that is not in your OB resource. We will add it. Daily, things are coming in from wonderful people. Her latest conference was given on June 24th, 1995. It is the School to Work program, and it is very reasonably priced at $6. Dr. Dennis Cuddy, a former senior policy advisor with the Department of Education, has a chronology of education with quotable quotes that is excellent for the more interested reader. The Blumenfeld education letter is wonderful, and it is also referred to in your OBE resource materials. There is a man in the state of Washington. Jed Brown ran for superintendent of schools in his state. He has done a wonderful 4 half-hour series of videos, but this is also for the more intent reader. It would be wonderful for your school board members and people of that capability to be able to understand. Every state has a list of your state senators and state representatives. In our state, it is very simply gotten by calling up our capital. These books in Michigan are supplied free. In your state, if you are not aware of your state senator and state rep, call your state capital. Every state will give you the information you need, and begin writing those letters and telling them they work for us. We do not work for them. I recommend home education, as I have with my children. There is a couple in our area that supplies this home education kit with every source that you'd ever want to desire. Magazines, homeschool support groups in your area. People are pulling their children out of schools. This kit will help you. You do not have to be an educator to teach your children. The resources and retired teachers are there at your beck and call. Now that you have digested all of this information, I will gladly send you the recipe for this blueberry muffin in front of me. Please consider taking your children immediately out of these government schools. Your children will lose their soul and their mind in them.